All right, Geek Stackers, it has been a long time, but we are back and here to discuss something. All right, now here we go, and we are both unmuted. So, today, what we decided to do, we both watched, it was hard. We both watched
For you,
Star
I thought
Wars
it was pretty cool.
Episode
The
1.
Phantom Menace.
Yeah, it was,
So this
well,
this is
it was hard for
before
me.
before hold on before we get
Okay,
into that,
go ahead.
I would just like to say for the next probably month and a half, we're going to be going through the first six of the Star Wars movies, saying what we think, talking about things we thought were cool, talking about things we thought weren't cool. And that's going to be the series that we're doing as of now. Now there might be some videos in between that, but this is going to be our main focus for the time being. And go.
So it was a good movie. Um, it wasn't terrible, but I will say I was there's a lot of things I missed during the initial run of the Phantom Menace that I did not realize that I missed. There,
That's crazy because I was thinking the same thing. There's some scenes I saw in there that I kind of just like if you blink you miss it type of thing,
right,
and it's like wait a minute, I don't remember this being in the movie. What the heck
right.
is this doing here?
A lot
Like
of that happened for me.
you know the scene where the droidicas come in and then they just like speed dash past them.
Yeah.
It's like if you blink you miss it type of thing. They never used that concept again in the other movies. Like they
So
did a thing with them jumping, but not the whole like force dashing thing. Like that's the only time you see that.
right. So I want to bring up. I meant to do this before we started. I'm gonna open up and bring up IMDb because this movie, I don't know how to say this. George Lucas had some great ideas, and there's some implementation aspects that could have been done better, and things that I don't think should have been in the movie. I'll say the first thing that I thought should not have been in a movie, and you can tell me what you think. I think Jar Jar Binks added way too much comedy that the movie did not need.
Oh,
And
even
he,
people who like the movie would agree with you on that. So the thing about Jar Jar Binks, it's something that you have to realize, and you probably understand more because you were there at the time, because you're about 1,000 years old. Um, is the fact
jokes.
that just like they did in the newer sequel movies, they were trying to appeal to a younger audience to get newer people invested in Star Wars, and you can tell that a lot, especially when you watch the movie. You're kind of like, huh, this seems like a play to kind of get younger viewers to be interested in Star Wars because it's like at the time the movie came out, it was 1999. So it was about 10 to 15 years removed from the last movie that came out, right? So it's like everybody who watched the first three are all grown up adults now. They have their own kids. So maybe the reasons they were doing stuff like that was to market towards them, right? And not to say it was a good idea. It definitely wasn't a good idea. Even in the Clone Wars series, he shows up like maybe four times because people realize we hate that character. Um, there's a
Yeah,
lot of unnecessary plot points they introduced that don't get touched on again, like the whole midichlorian count thing. We don't even know what the reference range for that is. They just said he has 20,000 midichlorians, and not even Master Yoda has that. I'm like, okay. And they explain what it is, but then it just what other movie is that mentioned in? It's mentioned in the
is
Clone Wars series,
is it? I don't remember. I'll have to watch when
but it's
when we
not mentioned
watch
in
that
any other
one again.
movies. They kind of it's like the Force dash thing we see them do. You don't really see that again. You see Obi-Wan jump like really high, or all Jedi jump really high from with the Force. But the whole Force dash thing you never see utilized ever again except for in episode one. And I think that you're right about the fact that George Lucas had a lot of good ideas, but the implementation and how he necessarily did it probably wasn't too good. Like I think he was trying to reinvent Star Wars at this time.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. I'll concede to your point. I think he was definitely trying to reach a much younger audience, and I think the mistake he made in doing that is the younger. Hold on, I just messed up your video right there. The younger audience were they ever really gonna be the driving force behind Star
I
Wars?
mean, they are now.
Hold on, hold on. I'm not saying does the younger audience have a does the younger audience have a presence? Absolutely. You have to get younger people interested in some of these IPs if you want them to grow. If
Right.
you expect this movie to go anywhere, there has to be people beyond that initial generation that gets bought on, right? Like DuckTales. I just did a
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I just did a video on my the Thinking channel. If you're not following the Thinking, go follow that channel.
Follow the thing.
I do a lot of narrative backstory videos on comic books and other things. And I did one on DuckTales where I went over the original artist that drew some of these DuckTales characters and wrote a lot of those stories from DuckTales actually in the 50s and 60s. His name is Carl Barks, like a true legend.
Carl Parks.
Yeah, a true legend in comic books, like super legend. And I did not know about him until like a few days ago. I wound up doing a bunch of research. Anyway, DuckTales grabbed a younger audience. He introduced Scrooge McDuck and all of that stuff in the 50s and 60s. I wasn't even born then. But yet the DuckTales comes out and Disney grabs a new audience and attracts them to these characters. But the thing is, they didn't change anything really about DuckTales in order to grab the new audience. The stories were just riveting. I don't know if Jar Jar Binks was necessary to grab a new young audience. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think this can also go in the category of conjecture. I think because you are part of that older generation, and when
Fair.
you saw the movie, you were a little older. It probably just irked a certain part of you. Because when I saw it, I just didn't really think about it because I was like 4 or 5. First time I saw the movie, I was like, Jar Jar Binks is kind of annoying, but the rest of the movie was cool. Like, I think one aspect
Fair point.
in which George Lucas kind of reinvented Star Wars, and I think the sequel series, which we might get to, we might not get to, depends on the reception of this series. The sequel series faltered on is the lightsaber combat. It was a lot more fluid, a lot more complex,
true.
and the
It's very
choreography
true.
was really good, right? So I think you have your good and your bad, and this is probably the point in time people actually started realizing George Lucas does not know how to write dialogue, right? Because it's like a lot of the lines in the movie, you're kind of just like, this doesn't feel natural.
It was definitely hard. The movie wasn't hard to follow, but some of the dialogue was definitely painful. And I found, let me know if you thought this. So when Jar Jar Binks is first introduced, right? They're on what's the planet, Naboo.
Coruscant.
Yeah, Coruscant.
Oh, Naboo.
Was it Naboo? Yeah.
Yeah, it was Naboo.
Naboo. Jar Jar Binks is introduced. Yo, the scenes with Jar Jar Binks initially, that was too long. That was way too long. That I
think that
this is
maybe George
crazy.
Lucas thought he was gonna be one of those gimmick characters people liked, like what, Chewie,
Right. He
So
probably
he kind
did.
of built his story up in the first movie, and then when the reception was poor, he was like, "Ah, dang, I gotta bow out of this."
But here's the thing, though. Chewie was a serious character. He wasn't a joke. Like the
There
character.
was some jokes pertaining to his character, though.
There was. I'd say the characters that were more of not jokes, but more jovial, the Ewoks. But the Ewoks.
The Ewoks were like
were
killing
enjoyable,
people
but
and
they were
chopping
enjoyable.
their heads off.
Right, they were enjoyable. They were jovial characters, but enjoyable. Jar Jar Binks, though, the whole setup of the character, the accent, just everything about the character, it was annoying. I don't know if you felt that way. Like, so this is
I
what
don't think it wasn't an annoyance for me. It was more of like
Okay.
if he wasn't in the movie, the plot would be no different.
There you go.
Aside from like that one part of them borrowing the I guess the plot would be different. Okay, the jokingness and like he was like, this is gonna sound crazy, he was like a minstrel show a little bit.
yes, that's a good way to put that. That's a good way to
Right?
put that.
Whereas like if they took that part of his character out and they made him like a semi joking character, it wouldn't have been too bad. But they made that his character.
He had too many lines. I think Jar Jar Binks had way too many lines, and
I think you're really holding on to this Jar Jar Binks thing. I feel like
Well,
Jar Jar
well,
duked in your cereal
no.
or something like that.
Here's the reason, and there's a lot of people that hated on Jar Jar Binks, and I won't mention the
People thought
actor
Jar
who.
Jar Binks was Darth Plagueis.
Yeah, I won't mention the actor who played Jar Jar Binks because a lot of people like gave him a lot of hatred as though he created the character. The man didn't create the character; he just
He was
played
just
the
doing his
character.
job.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's kind of crazy. But the problem with Jar Jar Binks is when I started the movie today, I'm watching, everything's going along. You know, they're headed. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are headed to their meeting. I'm into it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how much I enjoyed this. And as soon as Jar Jar Binks stepped on the scene, I hit 2 times
Immediately, you're
speed.
just like, who is this dude?
Yeah, I was like 2 times speed. I'm done with Jar Jar already. I
I
don't
didn't know
want to
you could
see
do that
this.
with Disney Plus though.
You can. So what I did was I screencast my phone to my Mac, and then I just hit 2 times speed, and I was like, yeah, I need to get past this. But so Jar Jar Binks himself wasn't necessarily a bad character. The implementation of the character
You really
was
hold on to
not
this Jar
was
Jar
not
Binks
thought
thing.
out.
There's so much
Okay,
more to get to.
so here's okay. So my next point. There's a reason I had to bring that up. There was so much space taken by things, not just that, a bunch of things that it was like, bro, these scenes went on way too long, and there's so many other things you could have done.
I think things that I wish got the time from the Jar Jar scenes is like the development of Anakin and Padme's relationship, right? A little more interesting to see that. How the Jedi Council was really going through things and actually explaining how the process of that actually, comes to fruition. Because in the movie, you kind of come to a conclusion like, okay, so he's too old to be trained as a Jedi, so they start younger. How young do they start? And like when I first watched the movie, that was the questions that was going through my head, and they didn't really get answered unless you read like the out of movie stuff like the books or the comic books, right? In the Legends comic books, you didn't really get a good explanation of that until the Clone Wars, right? Where it kind of delved really deep into that, which the Clone Wars within itself is a great series, one of the best cartoon series of all time. But
Think it's
yeah,
up
I
there
mean,
with
it's
Batman animated series.
ooh,
I'd
yeah,
say yeah, I would say
yeah,
yeah. I would
I
say it
think it's up
is.
there.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I say that to say there are a lot of things that kind of focus on like the midichlorian thing. Because I think I think that kind of drives into the whole he was trying to reinvent the universe. And I think the reason that some of this stuff never shows up again is because he saw the reception and was like, okay, they don't like this, they don't like this, they don't like that. And he didn't drag those things into the second and third movie, which we'll talk about later.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think so
That's a good
the
point.
whole plot,
That's a
the
good
whole
point.
plot of the movie, right?
He-
It's
he-
like
You make a good point. George Lucas was figuring things out because
right.
I mean the last movies, let's see, because I can't remember when
it was like 86 or something like that.
yeah, let me see. I got
Was it
the
Return of the
times.
Jedi?
So the first one was 1977. That's New Hope. And
Second
then
one,
why is it not
1979.
listening? Yeah, for some reason it's listing these backwards on IMDb, which is crazy. I don't know why it's doing that. But yeah, for
No,
some
Empire
reason.
Strikes Back was 1980.
Okay, yeah. So
And then 3 years after that was the last in the trilogy, Return of the Jedi, 1983.
okay,
So the next movie came out in 99, which was almost, actually, I think more than 10 years, like 13 years later.
yeah, so that's a lot of time between, those two movies. So I can understand that.
16 years later.
Yeah, so I can understand he lost a little bit of creative steam, right? And which I get that.
I don't know if it's a loss of creative steam or it's like a new time. Like whenever writers, especially like movie writers, progress, their art gets a little different every time. There's like very few people who keep a consistent style throughout movies or
Good point.
consistent themes throughout movies. Like one
Good
of
point.
the few people I do see that does it is Christopher Nolan. Something a theme he has in every single movie that he does is time.
That's a good point.
The Dark Knight trilogy,
That's a good point.
a lot of the stuff that happened in the plot was
He
time
keep-
dependent. Tenet, Interstellar.
Interstellar, such a great movie. we have
Inception.
to do one on that, on Interstellar.
You know what? I'd be down to do one on that. I
Yeah.
watched it again recently. I'm gonna have to watch it again.
Yeah.
That's literally one of my favorite movies of
Oh
all
my
time.
goodness, that movie's so good. But
That's
So maybe the problem, and you brought this out, which is a very good point. He was trying to figure out how to move the story forward. What would stick? What will people like?
Right.
What won't
It
they
was
like?
like it was like a testing ground, and you definitely see the progression of that with the next movies that came out after.
Yeah, because they were better. They
They
from
were.
even from my memory, they were better. I tell you one thing. One thing I pull from this movie where Disney messed up. In this movie, you get to see just how much of a gangster Obi-Wan is. When Qui-Gon was killed,
He was like, "Oh
yeah,
nah,
it was a
my
wrap.
dog."
So and
Listen,
so which leads to another point. You can see how Disney messed up with the Obi-Wan series. Like they neutered Obi-Wan. Like, man, this is not
yeah. So
the
even
Obi-Wan
you
that
know who really got his story right post Clone Wars? Star Wars Rebels.
mm,
Star Wars Rebels. That scene
mm,
where Darth Maul comes to fight him and he like obliterates him. Like it's funny because the actor for Darth Maul, the voice actor for Darth Maul, and he also played the character for Force Unleashed. Freaking love this dude. Okay, he probably knows the most about Star Wars lore right under George Lucas.
that's pretty crazy.
And he explained the scene with Obi-Wan and Darth Maul and Rebels, where it's like he starts off in the regular Obi-Wan stance that he used in the Clone Wars, and then he went to Qui-Gon stance, right? To kind of get him. Then he switched to a different stance. But in the fight scene, you see that Darth Maul tries to use the same move he used to kill Qui-Gon. And Obi-Wan knows he's going to do that. So as soon as he tries to do that same move, he's like, slice him right down the middle. I'm like, he gangster. He gangster for
Obi-Wan
sure.
is a gangster. I mean, and
I,
you even see it, and you see it when he pretty much cuts Anakin down, right? And
that's
episode 3.
Well, that's
Yeah,
yeah, but that's his brother.
yeah, but
That's
so
his brother.
that
That's crazy.
so that kind of there's so many things that this movie leads you towards, and you made a good point, and I will concede to that point. George, this was a proving ground for George Lucas for a new audience.
Right, like it's 16 years.
Right,
16
yeah.
years after he's touched this, it's kind of like it's gonna take a bit for him to get used to a lot.
He
of
made
stuff.
some mistakes. There was mistakes
Yeah.
made. The pacing of this movie definitely was
It's a little slow.
it was like lacking.
It's a little slow.
Yeah, definitely lacking. They could
I
have.
didn't realize how long this movie. It was 2 hours
Oh
long.
my goodness,
It was a 2 hour movie, and it was like 90% talking.
it was hard.
And I understand to like build the story. Like I will say one of the things that I think George Lucas is best at, right, is story building or world building. Sorry.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
creating a universe that you want to ask more questions about and you want to know more about is like one of his strongest qualities when he's writing a
is.
story.
It
Even
is.
his other franchises like your Jurassic.
That's where he
that
works
wasn't
his
him.
magic.
In your Indiana Jones, right? Like you watch the Indiana Jones movie and you watch the movie, but you also be like, you'd think outside of like what you're currently watching in that same universe.
Yeah, that's true.
And he has a really good way of doing that, even in the prequels. But I think that my favorite part of the movie is or my two favorite parts, I guess, is the choreography and the music.
Oh yeah,
Something
masterful.
I found to
masterful.
be really lackluster in the sequel series was choreography was dog water. For a
It
movie
wasn't as
made in the
good.
20 teens,
Yeah,
horrible. And
Yeah,
the
they-
music, forgettable.
Well, and I think it's because they don't realize that the score in and of itself is another character. Like you get
and I
that.
think that George Lucas does that so well.
He does.
And so effortlessly adds it to like certain things I'll hear, like the pod racing scene had its own theme that's somewhat nostalgic. And I'm
It
like,
is.
oh yeah, this is like it. I associate this sound with this scene. Or when
Right.
the Duel of Fates. Duel of Fates is one of the most well-known Star Wars scores of all time. And it came out almost 40 years after the original story.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that these things are done so well that they're synonymous with the movie.
With Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like you hear dun 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 dun
Oh,
dun
my
dun dun.
goodness.
You're like, oh,
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars, Duel of Fates.
You don't, and you're right. You don't in the most recent movies, you don't really get that sense. You know how like the score gives you a sense of urgency in certain places, invokes
yeah.
emotion in certain places. You know,
Yeah.
it makes you think more in certain places. And the new movies, it's like
It's
yo, where
background
is
noise.
this? Yeah,
It's
where is
background
this?
noise.
Doesn't even
It's like the
matter.
Halo 5 soundtrack, Halo 4 soundtrack versus the Halo 2 soundtrack.
Oh man,
And it's the same problem where it's like
we might have to
they
go.
don't
We might
realize
have to cover the Halo show as well. That's another one we might have to cover.
season 1 or season 2.
Season 1, because season 2 is
Brother, I
coming.
gotta
Yeah.
finish this garbage
Oh
show.
yeah.
All right, I
But
guess.
yeah, there's a lot of things we have to cover. All right, so pacing was definitely an issue, and maybe the score is what makes Phantom Menace so much better than the newer movies. Even though there was a lot of issues with Phantom Menace. Clearly, as you watch it again, you realize, oh man,
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of areas
I
where,
mean, you could the CGI I think aspect kind of.
oh man,
So
I was gonna
that
bring
is a
that up.
thing. That is a thing that I think he started because he didn't really they didn't really use it. Well, actually, they still used it a lot, but they got better with it through time in the two later movies. But in the Phantom Menace, they were so heavily relying on it, and you could tell. You could tell. You were like,
Yeah, that CGI was trash.
mm.
So
Like
what?
maybe in 1999 it was good, but looking back, it does not age well. And it's funny because the older movies effects age really well,
So
no
that
matter when you're watching them.
brings up a good point. All right, so I'm gonna bring up a newer movie, and
I know what movie you're talking about.
you know exactly where I'm gonna go. Godzilla minus one.
Yes,
So that
sir.
kind of makes me think that what George Lucas should have done is use similar techniques that he used in the original movies. Like, don't do so much CGI. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You have better cameras now, better camera effects, right? You can build things to scale, and with the right camera, make it look like it's some huge structure.
So a show that I think does that very well that's also Star Wars, Mandalorian.
I knew you were gonna bring that up. Yeah,
They do a
it does
good
that very
combination
well.
of using Unreal Engine 5
Yeah,
and also integrating it with blue screen technology that's also in like an actual live like
right.
studio with
Right.
actual like props
Yeah.
there, where it's like a mixture of both practical and CGI effects, and it works. And I think the issue with the Phantom Menace people had was like it was just CGI. Like the practical effects were there, but it wasn't as much.
I could tell, and I didn't realize, at the time, when Phantom Menace came out, I was so
You're not
excited
looking for this stuff.
to see a new Star Wars movie.
You had the Star Wars eyes. Look, I
Yeah,
had
I
the
did.
same thing when the Last Jedi came out.
Yeah, blinders
like,
were on. But
blinders
looking
were on.
back at it, like today when I watched it, I was like, oh my goodness. Like, oh my goodness. These special effects CGI is trash.
It's crazy because I can tell what some of the CGI stuff was probably written in. Because I was like, oh, this looks like OpenGL right here. Because the lighting, because like in the late 90s and early 2000s, people were using a lot of the same pixel shaders to do a lot of things. That's why when you see a 3D game and they all kind of look like they had the same lighting, like in the 90s, early 2000s, it's because they all probably did have the same lighting. That's like,
so it's like, yeah, we're just gonna use the same kit. We're not
because nobody really knew how to write a lot in HLSL or even PLSL, which is like PlayStation's graphical programming language. But
this is
definitely
software
over time.
developer language right here.
Sorry,
he's going over the rest of our heads. Software developer mode.
But I think it's important to know that the CGI did get better over time, and we're gonna see that as we get through each of the movies.
Yeah. Episode 3, you can tell because I've watched some scenes recently from episode 3, and I'm like, yo, this is, and the choreography in episode 3,
episode 3 is the best culmination of a trilogy story in the last.
Ooh,
okay, the best
Lord of
the
the Rings. You sure?
Yeah, I was thinking. I was like, wait a minute, Lord of the Rings came out after.
Yeah.
So I'll say that
it was
Revenge
good though.
of the Sith.
It was good.
Is the last really great Star Wars movie.
It makes me wonder. So I'll tell you what this made me wonder as I watched this movie. So I will say this: actor choices, magnificent.
Amazing.
I will give. Like, I don't know who was making those decisions. I don't know if George Lucas had creative control over that.
Hold on.
Whoever did.
Something that I found out that was crazy. I don't mean to interrupt you, but something that I found out that was crazy a while back. You know Keira Knightley?
Keira Knightley.
She was in Pride and Prejudice movie.
Oh man.
You never seen that
I'm
movie?
loosely familiar with Pride and Prejudice. Definitely
Yeah.
not
So
my shtick.
back in the day, currently at this point in time in Hollywood, people thought that her and Natalie Portman looked alike. So the Padme Amidala look-alike or the decoy was Keira Knightley.
Really? I thought
Yeah,
that
because
was
that's
Natalie
why they look
Portman.
so similar.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness!
because
I
everybody
thought
was
they
thinking
were
the same
doing
thing. Everybody was
cutscenes.
yes.
I thought
Everybody thought the same thing.
Wow.
But I don't know because whoever
did
the casting
not.
director was for Phantom Menace
Let me
deserves an
look her
award.
up. What's her name? Keira
Keira
Knightley.
Knightley. Yeah,
Oh
because they
my
look very
goodness.
similar. Even to this day, they still look pretty similar.
That's
There's like a few things that are different,
crazy.
but they look pretty similar. Because when I watch the scenes back, I'm like, I can't really tell who's who, and it's funny.
Yo, it's crazy that I never knew this.
Because when they eventually switch places and she's like, no, I'm the actual queen, you don't notice that much of a difference physically.
Yo,
Yeah,
she
a
looks
brain explosion, right?
exactly like
That's
Natalie
what I'm saying.
Portman.
That's what I'm telling you. So like when you brought up the casting director thing, that's where my brain went. Yeah.
Yo,
That's crazy, right? Look.
Goodness. You know what's
Actor
funny?
choice.
So I remember her from Pirates of the Caribbean. That's what I remember.
Oh, that
her from.
was her.
That
was
her.
Natalie Portman.
So oh my goodness, man, they do look alike. Like they could be sis. Yo,
Yeah.
that was. Yo, I don't like
Perfect
I said.
casting choice.
Yeah, I don't know if George Lucas was the one making the calls. I'm sure he was involved. I don't know if he was making the calls, but
I remember somebody
kudos.
mentioning that, and I looked it up today, and I'm like, oh my goodness,
kudos.
They look pretty sick. Because like I think like paying attention to little details like that. Oh my goodness, freaking crazy.
Yeah,
and it's even down to like the details of who they chose to be actors, because Ewan McGregor, who knows if he would have really looked like Obi-Wan older, and he did. That's the thing. Like he really, like by the second movie, you're like, wait a minute, did the dude from the fourth movie like go in a time machine and come back? Like what's going on here? And it's
you could he fit like somebody was doing their job.
Even like the voice inflection of how he talked was like Sir Alec Alec McGuinness.
Yes, that's very true.
It was
very true.
Very good casting. Very like it is one of those things. I will say Star Wars is really good at casting people. That's one thing they do get right.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Some of the most
that's why I said for the most part.
movies. Yeah,
that's why I said for the most part.
So I tell you one thing that I wish would not have happened in this movie, and I didn't realize how much I love this character. And I don't think there was a way for George Lucas to know how much people would love this character. Qui-Gon should have never been killed.
So here is why I think Qui-Gon's death was narratively important.
Okay. Which I can definitely understand why it was important for him to die, but man, I didn't want him to.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the reason why he had to die, right? Because had Qui-Gon been around when Anakin was going through his stuff, instead of Anakin going to the Chancellor, who would he have gone to?
It's Qui-Gon.
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah, it's a good point. Good point.
And when everything was going on with Count Dooku, you know who Count Dooku was closest with in the Jedi Court? Qui-Gon Jinn. Do you know what he told Qui-Gon Jinn? He was like, somebody in the Senate is controlling everything and working this war out from the inside.
Good
There's
point.
There's a lot of stuff that he says that you don't really think about. And then when you get to the end of the series, you're like, wait a minute, hold on, right? So if Qui-Gon Jinn was alive, none of this would have happened. Revenge of the Sith wouldn't happen.
Very good point.
New Hope wouldn't happen.
Very good
Because
point.
of how he worked narratively, he had to die. And that explains why you see, one, Obi-Wan become more serious, right?
Way more
Two,
serious. Yeah.
There's no one for Anakin to really pair off of and sort of getting guidance, because even though Obi-Wan was his master, even in the second movie it says they're pretty much like brothers.
Yeah.
Right? And I think they did that on purpose.
Yes. So to your point,
because Anakin has daddy issues.
Right.
He doesn't know his dad.
And he respected Qui-Gon as a dad figure.
Exactly,
so that
as his surrogate father.
Yeah.
And then when he met the Chancellor found out, Chancellor was like, oh, this nigga's strong in the Force. And he started planting little seeds even when they first met.
It's a very good point. Very good point. Yeah. Yeah, it was just one of those things when I saw it, I was like, oh, man, Qui-Gon had to die. I get it.
When you see him again in the Obi-Wan series, though, that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Spoilers.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. If you haven't watched
That was pretty
Obi-Wan,
dope.
he shows up. I think overall the movie was good, but it had issues when you watch it again that
Yeah.
you wouldn't have
Yeah.
realized at the time. Like for the
Well, it's
time
like
it came
it's
out,
never as good as the first time you watch it.
except for the original series. That original series I can watch over and over again, and I'm still
Okay,
like,
but do
yo,
you
this is
think that maybe? Okay, I know this is a hard thing for older people to
nostalgia.
realize.
Yeah, nostalgia.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna
no
say.
doubt, no doubt, no doubt. Okay, so I will give you that, but I will add a caveat. When you watch the original trilogy, do you enjoy
Mhm.
them? You're from another
Yeah,
generation.
yeah.
So
Well, I enjoy both.
no, and I agree. I enjoy both. What I'm saying is when I watch the original, I still marvel at the technological advancements of a movie that came out in the 70s. I'm like,
Which
this
is
came
yeah,
out in the
like the
70s.
the things they were doing in that movie
Like,
were
bro. Now, but then when you look at episode 1, you're like, yo, you came out at the same time as the
yeah.
Matrix. Like
Yeah, so
this, like
I look, and
he could have done better.
right? Lucasfilm's graphics department probably wasn't all up to par as it is
They
now.
probably
So I'm
weren't.
just saying, just
It
let me
makes
just
me
give him
it
some
makes me
grace.
kind of sad that
Because
Lucas
Matrix was bankrolled by Miramax. You got to remember that.
Matrix was such a great movie, but it kind of makes me sad that Lucas was bought by Disney because and I realize I get it. Like I think George Lucas kind of wanted to get out of having creative control. I think he kind of wanted to move on past the torch to somebody else. But man, I wish he would have just held on to it. I wish he would have
No,
just
I mean, I think that we've gotten a lot of good out of that, even though we've gotten a lot of bad as well. And I appreciate it for the good. That's my perspective. Like you
a
can
lot of
dwell
the
on all the horrible
cartoons. Yeah, a lot of the
movies,
cartoons
the
probably wouldn't have happened.
failed things.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
So it's like there's a lot
Good
of good
point.
that I do appreciate out
Some of
of
the games,
Disney buying
yeah,
Lucasfilm.
some of the games have been
Some of the games are dope.
magnificent.
Look,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's you
Good
take the good
point.
with the bad. It is
Yeah,
what it is, right?
good
People were
point.
telling him to sell it when episode 1 came out. You probably remember that. People were pissed.
I barely
Yeah.
remember that. So when episode 1 came out, this was like internet 1.0.
25. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is internet was like
25 years ago.
internet was like really just getting its sea legs.
The first 4chan meme was sent several weeks before.
It's hilarious. Yeah, I think overall the movie was good. You notice if you watch it again, you'll notice some issues, pacing, dialogue.
Dialogue. Oh
Some
my
of the
gosh.
scenes dragged on for way. The look, as much as I love some of the racing, that scene went for a little too long.
Nah, I disagree. I liked it.
I think it went for a little too long.
Everybody remembers.
No, look, I enjoy it.
It's
Look,
pod racing.
yeah, I enjoyed a pod racing scene. I enjoyed immensely. I'm not okay. So let me clarify what I'm saying. I'm not saying it was a problem. I'm saying there's so many other things you could have filled. You could have shortened that and filled so many other things. And I think there's a lot of scenes like that in a movie where you're like, okay, move this along. There's a little too much talking. Like,
Yeah.
you like
Something that I think this is a little off topic from what you were saying, but we were talking about dialogue. Something I think that is really, I'll say, culturally important, at least to my generation, was the Phantom Menace memes or the prequel memes. 'Cause there's a lot of scenes in the prequels that like people of my generation just make memes out of because it's just funny, like how they said it or what was said, right? And I think that because I think it's like a cultural staple now at this point,
right.
right? Where it's like even in the older Star Wars movies, there are some things that are cultural staples, but not to the point of like they become whole memes. And it could be because of when it came out in the generation that watched it. But I do think that's something to pay attention to as we go on through this trilogy.
You know what? And I'm thinking about something you said that I should have caught. Keira Knightley, the accent. I should have caught on to the accent. And what's funny is, as I was watching, I was like, "Why is Natalie?"
Oh yeah, she
Portman,
was using her accent.
Yeah, why does Natalie Portman have this accent when she's like? And it's a pretty good accent, but why does she have? Why is she doing? Man, that's pretty slick. That's pretty slick. I gotta admit, that is pretty freaking slick. I like it. I like it. Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn. That was a
Yeah,
like
that was a great casting.
it was a great
That was a
casting.
great
What was
casting.
he in before that? I don't know if I was really familiar with Liam Neeson
I
before
don't
that.
know. I only know him from Taken because that's like his most
Oh
popular
yeah,
series.
yeah. That and Taken, which came after. But yeah, I don't know if I really knew who he was. Ewan McGregor, I knew of him, but I
Ewan
wasn't.
McGregor was in some really good indie films before
Yeah,
that.
he was, but I mean, I didn't really know him like that. Natalie Portman, she was known, but wasn't like a big actor. Like,
You know what? He was in oh my gosh, Liam Neeson was in Schindler's List.
oh man, how could I forget about that? You're right. You're right.
Yeah,
That's a pretty big one. That's a pretty
it's a
big
pretty
one.
big movie. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not gonna
yeah,
lie.
yeah. That's pretty big. It's funny how you forget about some of those movies as time passes. But yeah, but Schindler's List was one of those movies that was so, and this is kind of a messed up thing, I guess. The movie was so good, you almost forgot about the actors
God,
that
who
were in
was
the
in it?
movie. Yeah, because it was just
Yeah,
such a good movie. You were more concerned with the plot than you were who was acting in it. So yeah, that's a
yeah, that's fair. But yeah, it's a lot of man.
what's that? Ian McDermott. Is that how you say his name? Senator Palpatine. Ian.
Oh,
Him
yeah, I
still
think it
being
is Ian
alive to
McDermott.
play Palpatine was pretty dope.
That was crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty. That
That
just
was crazy.
what wasn't expected. I remember when I was watching it, I was like, "Hey, this looks
This
like the
same
same
dude?
dude. This is the same dude.
Yeah.
What the heck?"
So I think if I had to say my main takeaways that I appreciated about the movie is definitely the choreography. The music, even though new, still had the same feeling of Star Wars.
100%. Yep,
And
100%.
really understanding where these characters started, right? Like
Yeah,
like in the original series, you heard about Anakin Skywalker, you heard about his hijinks, but you never really saw proof of that except for like maybe the one scene in A New Hope, the lightsaber scene in Empire Strikes Back,
right.
and then that's it. Because in the Return of the Jedi, you don't really see much from him. Like he fights off Palpatine, that's it. But you don't really see this like great overarching figure that is exclaimed upon by Obi-Wan in the original movie.
I will say one thing that episode 1 missed on slightly was the space western aspect. I think they kind of missed
Yeah.
that feel.
Well, because I think it's a different time.
True.
It's a different time.
Very true.
Because at the point in time that the rest of the movies take place in, there's an oppressive force ruling over the galaxy.
Yeah.
Everything sucks. Nobody's free.
Yep.
So everybody would naturally become space cowboys. That would kind of be the vibe going on.
Good point.
But also, it started on Tatooine.
Yeah. Good point. Very,
So,
very good point. It was overall. I think episode 1 is a movie worthy of celebration. Not without issues, but a movie worthy of celebration.
Yeah.
George Lucas put forth a good effort, even with the issues that I took with the movie. It was a
They were
movie
still
that I
good.
can go back and look at and go, yeah, I took issue, but this was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't
The
deny
part
this was good.
that gets me so much is like the choreography was so amazing. And then
Those light
the dude
and
who
the thing-
played Darth Maul, it took him. Actually, no, he used to be like a bow staff master or something like that. Like
didn't
he
know
was
that.
really into martial arts. And it took him like a few months to actually figure out how to use the double lightsaber. And a lot of the choreography that he had for it, he made up himself.
Oh wow, I didn't know that
Yeah,
at all.
like, he was that guy.
Yeah, I think the kid me was flipping out inside seeing like no doubt lightsaber duels. I'd been wanting to see that since I was like 5.
Because it's like
And I was
even
like,
the lightsaber
oh,
duels
this
that
is
did
so
happen in the original
magnificent.
trilogy, they weren't bad, but like
They
the
just
duels we got in episode 2 and 3,
more fast paced. Yeah, more fast
They were
paced.
crazy, and that's
Yeah.
why whenever I watch the sequels, I get so aggravated. I'm like, we have better technology?
Yeah, we've regressed.
What is going on?
Yeah, how have we regressed?
We have gone back. Like not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but the last fight scene between Rey and Kylo Ren in the last movie, I'm like, nigga, I could have written this choreography.
Snorefest. That was a snore.
could've-
Like I was
I
like,
could have written this choreography.
put me to
This is
sleep
ridiculous.
now. Yeah, put me to sleep
Yeah.
now. That was not good.
Yeah, I think I liked the was it the Gungans? I thought they were cool.
They were
Outside of Jar Jar Binks,
Yeah,
the Gungans were interesting people.
they were interesting, and Jar Jar Binks himself wasn't a terrible character. It was the way the character
It's
was
his execution.
written. Yeah, it was just
Yeah.
like, man, this was like infusing comedy into Star Wars, get it, right? You want some comic relief, even in a serious movie. But yo, like you can overdo it, kind of like, and we'll probably cover this movie as well. What was it? Not Thor: Love and Thunder. What was the first Thor movie Tiki Watiti did?
You didn't like Ragnarok?
No, Ragnarok was good. Ragnarok was good. I love
Oh
that
my
movie. Yeah,
gosh.
no. I
I
love
was
that
gonna fight
movie.
you.
No, I love that movie. There was a little bit too much comedy, and even Chris Hemsworth, he brought up the fact that if he's gonna come back to Thor, he doesn't want any more of that. Like the character needs to get back to serious. Like you read Thor comic books, you don't think comedy.
Dude.
So that's why I think when you watch Star Wars, you think jovial at times, but you don't necessarily think comedy. Like even the cartoons, you don't think comedy. Like there's some serious
Cartoons
things.
are a lot more serious than some
That's
of the
what
movies.
I'm saying.
So
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
there's so the execution of that, special effects, could have been done better. Choreography, A1. Actor choices, A1. Casting was A1. Score, A1. Lightsaber
Yeah.
duels, A1. I will say the world building and some of the things that were done,
I was about to bring that up.
it was
I was about
very
to bring
good.
that up.
Yeah, it was
The
actually
different
very good.
languages that the people were like when you see the scene where Anakin's speaking to the one like merchant dude and then
Yeah.
he's speaking to the Ubala or whatever he's called.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I forget
what
his name.
was.
But I'm like, oh, okay. Like it makes you intrigued. I'm like, okay, so what language are they speaking?
Yeah.
I wonder what they're saying. Like it makes you intrigued to want to know more about the world. I think a good trademark of great world building is you would like to know more about the world outside of the narrative you're seeing.
Yes. Yes, they did a very good job of that. And I have not, I know about things from the books. I have not read the books, so I don't know how
read a few.
much of the books were infused
You
into.
had one at your old house. You had the
Yeah, I
Return
did.
of the Jedi book.
Right. Yeah, I did, but I never really read, any of the Star
There was
Wars
a few
books.
things that were different. They actually showed you how Luke got his lightsaber hilt.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I realize that there's things I probably missed. Like had I read the books, there's probably some things I would have saw. Like, oh my goodness, they did this or they did that. Overall, the movie was good. Overall, the feeling I got as I watched this was what we see done moving forward after episode 3 is really a travesty. It really is a travesty, and you don't really realize it until you watch this movie. Even with the things about this movie that
This
you
is
may
like
or
the worst of the sequel series or of the prequel series, and
yeah,
it's still 1,000 times better than any of the sequels.
I
I think
agree.
the only one that holds a flame to it is Force Awakens. Because look, Force Awakens by itself, removed from the other two movies, not a bad movie. Not a bad movie.
Okay.
I will stand by that.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I'll
will
tell you
stand
why
by
I'll
that.
give you that, because there's things we thought was gonna happen when we
That
saw
never
Force
happened,
Awakens.
or they
yeah.
did a bait and switch.
Yes.
So, and I think that
Yeah.
Force Awakens alone, great movie, amazing movie. Intertwined in between the 3 different subplots going on, horrible.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things. When we get to Force Awakens, I am going to take notes and write down all of the things that had they done in the next movie, Star Wars would have been back and on top and in a way that we haven't seen in years. And they botched up so much stuff. And
It's because they switched directors midway through the series.
yeah, that's never a good thing. We saw
don't
what
understand why
happened
they
with
did that.
yeah, we saw what happened
J.J.
with the
Abrams.
Justice League, and of course that was because of a tragedy.
Brother.
Yeah, that's a whole
Yeah.
nother situation.
I
but
think they should have given him time to finish what he had to do.
just pause.
Um,
Yeah, just
Yeah.
like I think if I'm a movie studio, I understand I got a lot riding, but if you say, hey, this man just had a tragedy in his life, his child just committed suicide, like
I
I
really think people in Hollywood care though. That's
no,
why
people in Hollywood don't care, but I think fans would have understood.
fans
like,
would have
yo,
understood.
Like, yo, let that man
Because like
give that man
when the
time
director
to
switched,
breathe.
everybody heard about it. We were like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So, but yeah, back to the subject at hand. I think this was a good building block to the next movies to come
Yeah.
after this. And to your
Yeah.
point, I think George Lucas was feeling some things out, like you said, seeing what people like, what people don't like. What can I move forward with? What do I need to remove? What do I need to keep? So that's definitely a good point that I did not consider as I was watching it. It was just because I'm so far removed from it, watching it again, and there were so many things that
You
were
start to see
painful
some
to
things.
watch. It's like,
Yeah, because
oh,
like I didn't realize it either until I rewatched. I'm like, I missed some of this stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Like even the scene where they dash away, and then the dude's like, they're in the air vents. Then it switches to like a CGI clip of them jumping down, and then it switches to a clip of them just zoomed in, and they're talking behind some things, and then
yeah,
another CGI clip that has nothing to do with what just happened. I'm like, what the what the heck?
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of things about this movie to enjoy, and
But
it makes
it was like a good test bed to
it
see
was
what he would be do moving
it
forward,
was, and
and once we get to the later movies, we can actually see that progression.
it makes you realize what Star Wars could be. And here's another thing it makes you realize. I don't think any fan is expecting perfection from Star Wars.
No, I am.
Well, I mean,
No, I'm playing.
let's say reasonable people aren't expecting perfection from Star Wars. We just want, don't bait and switch me. Don't have me thinking like if you're gonna build up to something and have me thinking you're gonna do something, and then you do something else, make sure that something else is so mind blowing that I'm like, all right, you got it.
Don't even care. Well, look, and I will say this until my lungs give out. You should watch Attack on Titan because that is something Hajime Isayama does to perfection.
Okay.
You never can predict what's gonna happen in that show, and it's always like a giant mind freak whenever something crazy happens.
When it happens, you're like, yeah, yeah, I
It's
like
not even
this.
bad. I would extol you to just watch Attack on Titan. It's a really good show.
I may
Jordan
watch
Peterson
that.
even likes it.
I may watch that. There's a lot of things that uh that I need to check out as a result of what's going on with some of the IPs that I love that are just not.
I'm telling you that join the dark side. Anime and manga is pretty good.
Yeah. I've seen people really enjoying it. I may watch some. I've been watching that one. What's the one that I
Doctor
told you? Yeah,
Stone.
Doctor Stone. It's pretty good.
Doctor Stone is really good.
I did not expect to like that show, and I was like, huh.
His character himself is hilarious.
Okay, this is actually a pretty good idea, pretty good plot
Yeah.
points. But overall, what would be a scale of 1 to 10? What are you giving Phantom Menace?
When I was younger, I would have given it a 10. Now, I'll give it hard 7, soft 8. Hard 7, soft 8.
Respectable,
Pretty good movie.
respectable, respectable. I think I'm gonna say I'll probably agree with you and give it. I give it about a 7.3. I give it a 7.3. I think
7.3.
yeah, I think it was a good movie. Had some issues for sure, but overall, I was like, yo, I enjoy this. This is a movie I could sit down and watch, and it, at a bare minimum, enjoy the movie for what it is.
My metric is always, would I be comfortable showing someone this movie that I care about their opinion?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
There's a few movies that I like that I'm like, yeah, I don't care if somebody likes it or not. I
Yeah,
like it.
and
Friday the Chance of Meatballs.
I'll be interested to see as we move on and move out of these this initial trilogy, because you did say we're gonna watch them in order, right? So we're gonna watch these and
in
then
timeline order.
yeah. So
Because some people watch it in the order they came out. I'm just like, I've never watched it in timeline order before. Let's try it.
yeah. So I'd be interested to see what rating we give the older movies after.
See, I already know what my favorite one is. I'm already giving that one a 10. I'm not gonna spoil it, no.
One of the reasons I'm super interested in that, because I wonder if Hollywood is making the mistake of thinking we want groundbreaking CGI instead of understanding, yo, that's good, but if your storyline is great, I can deal with some, not janky, but I can deal with lower budget CGI. Like it doesn't
Well,
have to be.
have you seen The Creator?
No, but I've heard it was good.
You have to watch that movie.
Okay, I will. I
It
will
is
see it.
really freaking good. It has
Denzel
what's I
Washington's
forget his
son.
name.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't remember
he's a
his
good
name.
actor.
Yeah,
All the
he
movies
is.
he's in, he's
Tenet.
great performance.
This movie. What movie was he in before Tenet? I can't remember. I have to look it up. But
But
yeah, I've
it was a great movie. I think that the narrative was great, the conclusion was amazing, and the themes that it talks about in this movie is really, yeah, The Creator, freaking amazing movie. But that budget was actually really low. But when you watch the movie, you're like, there's no way they got that on this budget.
yeah.
Because
So
I wanted
that
to watch it in theaters, but the shift ended up coming out. And I saw that instead.
yeah, that's pretty crazy that you say that because I think Hollywood is super fixated on budget. And
Oh yeah,
I
the
would
budget
argue,
was $80 million.
wow, really? Really?
Yeah,
Because
which for a
even
movie is not that much.
yeah, even what I saw from the credits, I would have thought it was way more than that. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
So I'll say to wrap this up, Star Wars Episode 1, a good entry by George Lucas, not without its issues, but it's clear as you pointed out that this was really a test bed for George Lucas to see what would work and what wouldn't work, which would explain why things were done a certain way and why certain things were introduced. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a good test bed to kind of see what people were liking in the newer generation of Star Wars fans, right? Um, sorry, I'm looking something up, and
Okay.
I think he found what worked and he found what didn't, and you can tell that especially once you get towards the last movie.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good, and I'm glad you brought that up because these are things I didn't consider as I was watching
It's
it.
funny because Gareth Edwards, the director of The Creator, was actually an extra in the Star Wars: The Last Jedi movie.
Really?
Yeah,
That is so
because I saw
interesting.
that on his IMDb credits. I'm like, what the heck did he do?
That is what a small world. What
Yeah.
a small world. That's interesting. It's crazy how things like that work out. So yeah, there you go. That is our review of Star Wars
Star Wars.
Episode 1
Menace.
Phantom Menace. Stay tuned. Next time we will be
Actually,
going over episode
I'm
2.
sorry.
What are you going to say?
I'm sorry to say this one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Another movie that Gareth Edwards directed.
What did
One
he
of the
direct?
best Star Wars movies to come out in the last decade. Rogue One.
Yo, Rogue One was good.
Rogue One was
Rogue
really
One
good.
was good. Yo, Disney,
I'm
what
sorry,
are you
I started
doing?
going down this rabbit hole at the end of the episode. My fault.
Yeah.
I'm just because I was like, wait, hold on.
Disney,
else
what
did
are
he
you
do?
doing? There's some good people out there that
Hire
could be
this dude
doing these
again.
things. Yeah, for real.
Yeah, but
So
this has been
anyway,
our review.
thank you for
Phantom
joining
Menace.
us. Next time we'll be going over episode 2.
Attack of the Clones.